So this time I wanted to do a tutorial on just my basic template and organization of my projects. I feel like, at least for my students at Icon Collective, where I teach, I get this question a lot about, like, what do you want out of your template? What are your return channels? How do you have the collections organized on the side? Like, what do you have in the places? Things like that. So this one might seem like, oh, it's not like a crazy sound design trick or anything like that, but it's still one of those really important things that helps me go quick and work really quickly when I am, opening a project and getting ready to go. The reason why I started using templates is because I found myself just doing the same thing over and over again every single time I opened a project, setting things up the exact same way. Now, and after I just kind of came to terms with that, I was like, well, I don't want to pigeonhole myself into always working the same way, but I'm going to be building this thing out every single time, then I might as well just do it right up front. So I figured that, okay, I'll just make a template and I'll work with that. And this is always evolving, right? Like, you shouldn't feel like, I have my template and I can't ever break away from it. I have a whole bunch over here that I'd played around with, and my default live set, like if I hit Command N and just make a new live set here, pops up with my template right off the bat. So let me just start going through this and explaining my thought process and why I do it this way. So first of all, this whole thing is divided into, I guess you can think of it as 4 main groups here. So first of all, I have my drums group, and I have my sidechain, which is just a single audio channel. And then I have my routing group, which is everything else besides the drums. And then I have vocals outside of all of this. And it's because if I'm using vocals, then I usually don't want those to be sidechained. And everything in this routing group gets sent to my sidechain input. Now, on my sidechain input, if you've seen me working before, you know that before what I had in here were shaper boxes. But I actually started using Kickstart recently, and I kind of like it. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't have the extra flexibility of being able to do band split sidechaining, but I can talk about that more in a minute. But it is really nice because when you're using Kickstart, and actually this needs to be set to audio, which is one thing. See, again, always updating it. I noticed before that I hadn't set this to audio, so now I'm going to go ahead and set this to audio. And I'm going to go to File, Save Live Set as Default Set. And I'm going to hit Enter, and it's going to overwrite the previous one. And so now I've made that update to this live set. So these kickstarts that I added in here are obviously a fairly recent addition, something that I didn't have in there before because I was using Shaperbox. I just really like that, first of all, you can do it with audio. That's nice, right? It'll just take the kick and snare audio and just start triggering them, straight from that. See, this should actually probably be set. Again, I'm gonna make another change to this template here. First of all, I've divided my kick and my snare into 2 separate channels. I usually only have like 1 kick in a project, but sometimes I won't. Sometimes I'll have more than that. But yeah, I just kind of like to keep the kick and the snare separate. Underneath here, I have my hats. Now, I really should call this one cymbals in general. And the reason why, yeah, there we go. Just resave it like that. I had it as hats before, but I just end up finding myself throwing all my different types of cymbals and metals, into this one. So yeah, kick, snare, cymbals, and then we got perks right here. And this is for any kind of little percussion thing that doesn't fall into like the metals or the cymbals category. And then underneath here I have fills. Before I used to just put fills into the perks, but I often find that fills tend to be, they need different types of processing than just general percussion. Like, extra top loops or little blips and blops and things I throw in there. The fills, I often like to keep those separate because I feel like they're a very important integral part that needs to be treated, differently than the other percussion stuff. So skipping over the sidechain group, next we have the routing group down here. All right, so in the routing group are 3 groups. Like, I find that I'm able to, I don't need to go crazy, right? I don't need like, mid bass, top bass, high bass. I end up doing that eventually anyway as the track progresses. But as far as a beginner template, I want to try and keep it simple. And I find that I can usually distill everything down into these 3 groups: basses, And that includes sub basses, mid basses, bass one shots, anything, right? Like any bass material gets put into this group. Then I have melodic material, all right? So this is anything that is tonal or plays a role as like a tonal instrument of any sort. This can be pads. This can be melodic instruments, right? This can be effect type sounds that have a tonal element to them. At that point, I might decide to put something from an effect group into the melodic group. And then I have my effects group, and this is just anything else, right? This is all the sweeps, the risers, the stuff that doesn't really play a main role in like the bass and melodic. It's not a drum, it's not bass, it's not a melody, it's not a vocal. Although, and I will put this as a little contingency here, if I have things like vocal one shots, like little like, hey, huh, things like that, then I will go ahead and put those in my effect group because I consider those to be a bit of an effect. If I have like a singing vocal, that's going to go in the box group down here, so it's not sidechained. Now, this entire group, which I've called routing here, gets sent to my sidechain input, and then I have my sidechain channel set to in, so that all of this automatically gets routed to sidechain. And this means like I don't have to set up my sidechain every single time I open this up. I'll throw a kick in here. I'll just do it right now here. Let's find a kick. Here we go. Right? So I got my kick, and then anything that I put in here is instantly and automatically sidechained. Let's just do like a one of my neuro basses in here. And we can see that all of this stuff is being sent over to this sidechain. And what I like about this, this kind of shows you what I like about Kickstart. You can see the phase here, right? It's really nice to be able to look at this and make sure these things are in phase. But you can also see how long the kick is. So I realize I probably need a bit of a longer sidechain, so I'll drag this out. And that way the kick and the bass or anything that's being sent through the sidechain group aren't interfering with each other. So that automatic sidechain being set up helps me to understand right from the start as I'm building the track how these different elements are going to interact with each other. Because oftentimes, if I don't have a sidechain set up from the beginning, first of all, I'll probably be getting distortion because I always work in the red. And at that point, usually I set the sidechain up anyway, so I don't have to do this anymore. But it also shows me how a sound is going to sound into the end result anyway. Because sometimes I might make like a cool melodic line and then realize that important notes are being cut out by the kick anyway, and I probably would have written it differently had I known that sidechain was going to be knocking that audio down right from the start. So hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, I just find that it's easier for me to try and comprehend the entire sound of what is going to be in the end as early as possible. And that includes working in the red, making sure that it's like everything is written at like a quote-unquote mastered volume so I can see the interaction between the different frequencies. That includes things like side chaining, and it also includes the organization of the track. This helps me get around, right? These colors are ones that I use every single time. I always made my effects purple. I always made my melodic stuff green. I always made my basses red. Vocals are always pink. And these were a little more freeform. I didn't really used to assign colors to these, but now I do because it helps me to find my way around a project, especially if the project gets big. Some of my projects can get like 200, 300 tracks, which is a little unreasonable. I know, I'm trying to work that out. I'm trying to make that a little bit lower. But it helps me to quickly be like, okay, I have fills, and in a huge project, I know the fills are going to be yellow, and I can just quickly navigate to it. So I feel like, I see a lot of people using projects where everything is black or everything is just like one color. I'm like, I can't find my way around that at all. I'm not going to sit here and read these. I usually don't even rename these, right? So how are you supposed to know what things are? Well, when they're colored in a certain shade, right? So sometimes I'll be like, my subs are in here. So I'll just put my sub right there. Put my sub right there, yeah. So I'll make my top basses like a different shade of red, like that. And now I know that like these are top basses, this is my sub bass, but it's all red, so it's all a bass kind of material. I think that right there is crucial for finding your way around huge tracks, huge projects, I should say. So yeah, I mean, I think I kind of went off on a tangent there, but you get the idea, right? Everything gets routed into the sidechain, and the sidechain is always operating, the sidechain is always working. Now, the one thing about this sidechain setup that is not quite as great as perhaps the shaper box is the inability to sidechain just the low end or just the high end.
Talk it to him.